All right. Hello, 14ers, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Ministry Revealed. It is January 26th, 2021, and I am glad you guys have come back for more because I was starting to dig into some things and really catch something that is going to blow your minds. All right. This video you're going to see today, I'm talking about is I'm filming it on the 26th. It probably won't be released till sometime later on tomorrow, which will be Wednesday, maybe early on Thursday, is when I'll release this. So the 27th, maybe the 28th, just to give enough time because the last video you can see is just a day ago, even though it was the live show we did with Mike over on Interrupts 165 and with Jamie and Amish there on last Friday. Well, guys, I'm going to lay a little bit of this foundation that's going to take place here today. And you may have heard me briefly speak about it in this video. On last Friday when I did the live show with on Interrupts 165, I had before we started, earlier in the day before we did the show, I was talking to Mike about something very interesting in the time of Christ's crucifixion that just wasn't making sense. And I said, man, if you look at this, tell me how many days is this? And he's like, huh. He's like, but if it's only that many days, why does Luke 24 then say the third day? And I said, man, I got to spend some more time in this. And so what you guys don't know is when I mentioned briefly in the live show, this last video here that I posted here as well, I mentioned it just briefly in there to say that Mike and I had spoken privately about it, and I'm going to work on it, and I'm not ready to talk about it yet. Well, the next day, I spent some time digging into it, and I said, oh my goodness, this is going to turn the world on its head. The church is going to flip as they come to understand this, and the only way this came to be revealed, brothers and sisters, is the 3.5 years of studying that have taken place here in this ministry, of this revelation of these opening books that have been taking place, this revelation of who the Gospels are speaking to, that the end times is 14 years. You see, brothers and sisters, this ministry isn't a was that people will teach in history about the scriptures. Then there's pastors, the vast majority of pastors on the earth will teach about the was and the application of it to life. This ministry is all about the is to come. We have been revealed the understanding, or are being revealed the understanding, not everything, of course, of the is to come. And the revelation for anybody that's new began with who the Gospels are speaking to. We have an introductory playlist here to give you the revelation, a 30-minute intro to see who the Gospels are speaking to in the end of days. You'll understand that we're talking about synoptic Gospels. Luke is speaking to the bride of Christ. Mark is speaking to the sleeping church that's left behind. And Matthew is speaking to the Jews who are also left behind. Then you're going to understand why the differences within those Gospels. You come to the second video, you're going to understand that we've been taught 7 years for the end times, and it's completely missed that the truth is 14. It is 2 sets of 7. That's why the 6th seal and the 7th is rest, 6 trumpets and the 7th is rest. And at that 7th, the Lord returns. The story is a 13-year story when the Lord returns, and then he's going to do the cleanup, if you will, or the whooping into place, or whatever you want to say, in that 14th year. And when it's the 14 years are over, it will be the final Jubilee. That 15th year is like the 50th year. You're going to understand all these things within these teachings. And then you want to watch this third one. This third one is going to explain how this was missed, what has happened. And the understanding is going to be built. What I'm telling you now, is going to be built into today's teaching. Everything that we've been taught in church comes from the foundation. Oh, they might talk a little bit about Mark, a little bit about Luke and some of the other portions, but the foundation of all of our understanding from the church has unfortunately been from Matthew's perspective. It's the reason why they don't know who the different gospels are speaking to. It's the reason why they only see one set of 7 instead of 2. It's the reason why for today's video, you're going to see we've been told that Christ was in the grave for 3 days. When you see this, and as I develop this revelation to show it to you, I'm not just going to give it to you. I never do that, because with new people and with older people, you're going to say, well, that doesn't prove that it was. I'm going to lay out this evidence for you today, and not only evidence, I'm going to lay out the facts, the truth of it to you. And so just like this one, the differences in the truth, you're going to understand why the Matthew foundation has messed everybody up in the understanding. You can even go into this 4th video and start to see all these main pieces that have been revealed here. Some of the big picture pieces that have been revealed in all little snippets that are revealed as to how they were revealed. It's amazing, amazing stuff. And then, of course, we got some more videos in here as well. Today's video is also going to comprise of this, the mystery of the comma and. It's amazing stuff, guys. So, needless to say, I am so excited. I am so just pumped up to share these things with you. It's going to be a trip. By the time it's done, I don't know what the video name is going to be yet, but you can something either in the title or in the very beginning of the description is going to have to do with the mic drop. I mean, we've had some serious mic drops in this ministry, some major mic drop moments. But when you see this one today, you're going to say, oh my goodness, how is this possible that we never understood this before? And I'm not fully going to say what it means, but for those who have been watching these last couple of videos, this live show we did and how I had posted this prior about the 40 days of the Son of Man, and how the end time code, the actual revelation of the end of days, the code, the key, the whatever you want to call it, is 50, 14, 50. It is going to be escape 50 days to Pentecost, of which 40 will be the Son of Man, 10 will be to Pentecost. Then the 14 years will begin. When the 14 years are all over, it will be the final Jubilee. There are 2 50s in Scripture. One is Pentecost, one is Jubilee, and it's the 14 years in between of seals and trumpets. And the Lord God, by the power of the Holy Spirit, gave us the confirmation directly by saying in brackets that we were right on target. And you guys would have heard me speak about that here as well for those that are newer. It's fantastic. It's beautiful. And like I said, I'm not going to go in to say what it means when you see it. For those that have been watching, those that are paying attention, those that heard what I talked about with that, about the 50, 14, 50, you'll clue in as we get to the end of the teaching when you see we end in Luke 24. The story today is going to start in Luke chapter 1, verse 1. And it's going to take us through places within Scripture, and how we're going to start and why we're going to start is when I had that conversation with Mike, like I said, he counted the days just like I did. And then we said, wait a second, well, how is this possible? Well, I had to go do some studying. And as I did some studying, it dawned on me, and I contacted them the next day and we chatted about it. And then I got an email from a comment in a post, one of these videos, I'm not sure which one. And it was somebody new to the ministry, about a month old, watching the videos here. I believe his name's Jeffy, his YouTube channel name, or his name, right? And he was excited, he was grateful, and so excited that, you know, the depth of everything that's opening. And I was saying how I'm just in awe of it as well. Every day I'm in awe by all of this revelation. Well, to set it up for you guys, he asks me, what do I think about the fact that in Luke chapter 1, verse 1, in that verse, you have the word hand, and it means G2021. And so I went and looked at it, and that began today's video. That's going to begin the video as we get going here today, because from that, I just started digging a bit more. But remember, I'm talking about the time of the death and resurrection of Christ. So you'd say, well, what does that have to do with it at the beginning of Luke? Well, at the onset, it may look like nothing, but it's the revelation of the word hand. Many of you guys that have been watching for a while, there's probably 2,000 or 3,000 new people since I did that revelation of the word hand. There's these two hands, and that's going to be the revelation that we're going to go into. And that revelation is going to bring us to the next revelation that we talked about here in this ministry several months ago, like 9-10 months ago. It's going to bring us into the comma and, which for those who are newer, it's going to blow your mind. When you're done and you've watched this video, you're going to want to go watch that video for yourself and see the revelation of it in full. And what that does is it will then bring us into this time of the resurrection, after you've understood the difference of the hands, after you've understand this time of the fullness of the Gentiles, and why the comma and is important, and how it connects to those with the two different types of hands, and bring it into this revelation in Matthew, Mark, and Luke about the death and resurrection of Christ. When we wrap it all up and finish it in Luke chapter 24, you're going to say, oh my goodness. And when you understand the revelation, you're going to understand, especially those who have been watching for a little bit, you're going to understand why, when Messiah is cut off at mid trumpets, like we've taught for so long, okay, 7 years of seals, 6.5 approximately in rapture, and then 7th seal, and then 3.5 years of trumpets. The Lord is on Mount Zion. The 144,000 are sent out during this time. They're rebuilding the city and the streets, but then Satan comes. And when Satan is cast down at the 5th trumpet, Messiah is cut off. This is the Psalms 90 and 10. 10 years from 70 to 80. This spring will begin 71, the beginning of tribulation. 71 to the end of 80 is 10 years. But it also said, and soon cut off. That's another about 6 months, 10.5 years to the 5th trumpet, which will be Messiah here. 7 years of seals, 3.5 years of trumpets, where the city and streets are being rebuilt before Messiah is cut off, because Satan's been cast down and the pit is opened. The cutting off of Messiah, we said Satan's time is a period of 2.5 years before Messiah returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives at the end of the 6th trumpet to the start of the 7th trumpet, just like we read in Zechariah 14, or just like we read at the beginning of the 7th trumpet. Everything is his on earth and above. Okay, then he's going to do the cleanup during that 7th year, and then the 14 will be done, and it will be the Jubilee year when they will all be gathered back. So what happened? 10.5, so 10 from 70 to 80, then soon 6 months, and then there's the we fly away. See, it's the Revelation chapter 12, the revelation right here, Revelation 12:14, when they'll fly away into the wilderness for the full time and times and half a time. So there's still 3.5 years left after Messiah is cut off. But Satan's time is only 2.5 during Messiah's cutoff time, before he returns at the end of the 13th year. It will have been 2.5 years. Remember that, because the reflection in the type and shadow is 2.5 days, but it's not in the grave. You guys will see it as we get going. But for those that have been watching for a little while and been saying, well, it's interesting that, I mean, if Messiah was in the grave for 3.5 days or over above 3 days, how is it that this only equals 2.5 before he returns after he's been cut off? You're about to see. You're going to witness it with your own eyes today, the revelation. So as we get started here, let me remind everybody, this is Ministry Revealed. And in fact, Ministry Revealed, you can go to our website through the link here in YouTube on our channel. You can support the ministry here. You can go to our Facebook, or you can go to our Twitter. Twitter is helped by our sister Trisha, which we appreciate. Facebook is by our brother Uncle Jimmy, that we really appreciate, and our brother Jimmy Luttrell, who does and takes care of our website. Thank you all. I appreciate you all. And here is the website, ministryrevealed.com. All the videos, these are the intro videos here that are listed. All things here on Ministry Revealed are free. All of the printouts, all of the videos, you can come here, click on the videos, and all of the videos will be listed there. You can come in here and join the forum. We've got close to 600 people in there, sharing, praying for each other, lifting each other up, sharing news, scriptures, all sorts of things going on in there. All right. But one of the things I also wanted to remind you guys of is scroll down to the lower part of the homepage, and we've got a special offer. It's a $10 Bible memory app for free. No, I don't get paid by BibleMemoryApp.com or whatever their name is. I am doing it for you guys. We've been blessed. They've given us a good deal on them, and our brother made this happen with them. It had nothing to do with me. He just told me about the deal that he did, and we got 250 paid for it. Now, we had to pay for some of it, right? And that's what our brother took care of for us. And Bible Memory App, we have these 250 licenses for free, okay, to anybody who wants them. Already paid for. They're $10. They're free. And anybody who wants one, it will help you to learn your scriptures, to remember your scriptures, give you notes and how to use the app, of course, but how to memorize these things that you've been trying to remember. But, you know, you get busy with life and you forget these things. This app will help you with those things. You enter Ministry Revealed like you see it here, no space, all caps. So you click on here, the first line you'll get is you'll do this. In the second line, it says account, email, or whatever it says. You enter in your own email. And then once you're in it, you've done those two things, you click activate, and you will receive your free Bible memory app. All right? So I haven't talked about it the last couple times, so I wanted to share that with you guys today, because obviously we still have some left. Otherwise, I wouldn't have told you. All right? So let's get going here more with today's revelation. Well, first of all, the blood moons. Now, this is something we all have heard about, these blood moons, and I just wanted to tack it in to the beginning of today's video, because somebody had brought it to my attention not too long ago and said, remember these blood moons, right? We know that we remember these blood moons from 2014 and 2015. They were Passover, Tabernacles, Passover, and Tabernacles on the Hebrew calendar. Well, we also know that this is going to happen again in 2032 to 2033. Pretty interesting, right? Because 2033, when 2033 is over, what do we know? The Messiah will have returned. And do you recognize that 2014 to 2033 is 20 years? Do you know why? It's the story of Jacob with Rachel, with Leah and Rachel, and then the cattle. When the 20 years are over, you guys know this story, right? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but the big picture that we teach in this ministry is 21 years. It's 7 easy years that we call them easy, but they're the 7 years that Jacob they flew by, he said, because he was so in love that they flew by, expecting to get Rachel, but he got Leah. He fulfilled her 7 days, and then he got Rachel, but he was told he had to fulfill her 7 now. That's why she didn't have babies until after her 7 years were fulfilled. So you have 7 easy years, and the escape of the bride is about to happen. Then you have the 7 years of seals, which he worked for Rachel, and then that portion is over, that church portion, right? And then you have the 6 years that he worked for the cattle. And in Genesis 31, he says, look, father-in-law, I worked for you for 20 years. I worked 7 and 7 or 14 for your 2 daughters. And I worked 6 for your cattle. And then he makes a covenant between him and his father-in-law. You see, this is the big picture of 21 years, 20 to 21 years. This is the same as saying the Lord returns after 20 years. He's feet down on the Mount of Olives when that final year covenant is made. It's the same thing as saying after 13 years. Okay? So I'm bringing that up to say the beginning of the count, Passover 2014. Passover 2014 to Passover 2021 is 7 years. 7 years. Okay? 7 years. And when the 20 is over, it's in 2033. Why? Because Christ was crucified and resurrected in the year 2033. And I am going to not only prove that to you more today, I'm going to show you how it's possible that church history tells us that it was called Resurrection Sunday. Yet it's been argued now for hundreds of years within the church that it's impossible with 3 days in the grave. He was taken on a Wednesday, some say, if it was after 3 days in the grave. Others will say then the Passover must have been on a Thursday if it was on the 3rd day. See, some will say after 3 days. So it must have been a Wednesday Passover. Others will say on the 3rd day or the 3rd day, which would be on the 3rd day. So it must have been a Thursday. You're going to understand this, guys, for the first time ever. Some of you may have heard it, but never understand. No, I highly doubt you guys have seen this before. All right. I certainly haven't. And I'm going to prove it all to you today. But you see, this again is connecting to what? The Passover time of 2021. What does 2021 equal? The springtime of 2021 is the literal end of the beginning of the end. There is no other time in all of human history going forward after the springish time of 2021. You notice we got it even laid out right here. Spring to spring. See, this is in the 7th year, spring to spring, spring 2020 to spring 2021. Okay, not day 1 of spring, but in the spring. You see, when the Lord returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives, we were told it would be after 2 days, after 2,000 years. So if he was crucified in 33 AD during Passover, meaning the year had already started, well, we were told he would return after 2 days, meaning at the end of 2033, which would be right before the spring of 2034, because a year goes from spring to spring. And the Bible has revealed to us that in the 14-year revelation, the Lord returns after 13 years. We've showed it in more than half a dozen places in Scripture. Do you understand what this is saying? This is definitely not where I was going with all this, but obviously the Spirit wants me to bring this to your attention. You're going to see it was 2033. you're going to see how it was possible and was true that it was a Sunday resurrection. How is it a Sunday resurrection in 33 AD? You're going to say, how is that possible when you see the calendar? And the calendar is correct, by the way. You're going to say, well, why did the Jews, why is it the Jews have the beginning of the count for the Omer on the 16th of Nisan? That's something we've been trying to understand and has baffled us as well. How is this possible? With the sheaf of the wave offering on the morrow after the Sabbath, which would have been, here was the Sabbath, the 15th of Nisan. Because I'm going to tell you something, guys. The Jews understand something here. It just, first of all, April of 33 was absolutely the year. And not only was it a Sabbath on the Saturday, it was actually the Sabbath. You see, we look at this and we say, oh, well, the Jews, that's because they observe every Saturday. But do you know the Jews only do that out of convenience? They know what they've done. They know that they've changed the ways of the Lord, who said on the Sabbath day, right? Every seventh day, 6 days, seventh rest. Well, if you follow that on every cycle of the new moon and the new month, the Jews know that some days it'll be a Monday, some will be a Wednesday, some will be a Tuesday, as the cycles change every month, right? But for convenience sake, they make it every Saturday. But at the true time of Christ's death and resurrection, the 15th, which is the truth, see, the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, the 29th, and then it would see the 8th would then be over here. It would be on a Monday the following month. Okay? And then it would be the 15th. You see that? So it switches. But the Jews don't do that anymore. But the truth is, they know that it's the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. But so awesome is God that in 33 AD, the 15th of Nisan landed on their quote unquote, even now modern day Sabbath, so that nobody gets confused by it. Okay? You're going to see, as I reveal this to you guys today, you're going to say, how could we have missed this? You see, they've got it. They've got it right. There's the Omer. But what the heck? How can this be the count? You know, most of the church accepts this Omer count that the Jews have, right? And call it Resurrection Sunday. But they'll tell you that he was in the grave for 3 days. Kind of leaves you scratching your head. How on earth is that possible, being in the grave for 3 days? And yet, here's his resurrection day. Ah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Let me just close this one off now. Okay, let's get started now. Yeah, you're going to say, oh, now you're getting started. You're almost half an hour in. Man, there was a lot of laying a foundation and giving you little tidbits and laying it out there for you guys, all right? It was worth listening to that, to understand what you're about to learn. So here's where it all started. This brother shared and he said, hey, look at Luke chapter 1 and the word hand. Well, I want to share this with you guys. I always love my trusted eSword, right? eSword is free for anybody. You can get it for free on PC, maybe a couple bucks a year on Apple. But we're going to start in Luke 1. And why do I love it? This right here, KJV Plus. If you just do KJV, no, I don't get paid anything from these guys either. I love this product, right? I love this service that they do. This is just reading regular Bible. This is reading with the understanding of the words built into it. Okay? That's why you can see the words. You see the words? This is what we're talking about today. Okay? This is where we're starting. Listen to what Luke says. For as much as many have taken in hand to set forth in order a declaration of those things which are most surely believed among us. What is he saying? He's saying Mark and Matthew have laid out their things in an order they believe is correct. They have made this declaration and they've set it forth in what they believe is in order in this declaration. And we believe their words. Okay, we believe their teachings. We understand that they're true. However, Luke then says, even as they delivered them unto us, which from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word. Again, Mark and Matthew. He then says, it seemed good to me also, having had perfect understanding of all things from the very first, to write unto thee in order, most excellent friend of God. Okay? So what is he saying? I know all things in order. Matthew and Mark are good and we realize it and we study them and they're true. But I am going to set the things in order properly and give you the perfect understanding of them. Whoa. You see, many people have said, and there's a belief out there by a number of people, that Luke was actually written by Jesus. Okay, when you see this kind of wording, it doesn't seem all that hard to believe. You know, it's not a big stretch. I don't know what it was. I just say it was Luke. It was Luke. All right, but it's not too far of a stretch to believe it when you hear that kind of wording. Now, let's have a look at this. Okay, he says to put in hand, to undertake. What's the definition of this word? Remember, this is what the brother had shared with me. Isn't it interesting that the word is 2021? 2021, and it's Luke in the beginning that knows all things from the very first, from the beginning, and he knows them in order, and it starts with the word 2021. And this word for 2021 is the word hand, but it means the hand of power. Okay, this is where I'm going into a teaching that a long time ago, those who've been around for a while will understand or remember. It's interesting, right? So it relates to a hand that is in relation to power, okay? To set forth in order, to arrange, to set in order, only used one time. The words or the word order has been used many times in scripture, but yet this one is only once because it's Luke arranging everything in order of understanding. To make a what? A declaration, a recital, to relate fully, to show and to declare, right? Again, used only once, to relate fully. Now, this word for power, the word for hand and power in the hand. I'm going to show you something now, and it's awesome. All right? We're going to go into Psalms 18 first. Some of you guys are saying, yeah, I remember this one. Okay? Psalms 18, I'm going to show you in our chart here that we have as well. Here's the book of Psalms. Psalms, people will say, well, no, we're 2021, so we're actually in chapter 21 of Psalms. No, we're not. We're not. And I'm going to show it to you. I've shown it not too long ago, but I'm going to show it to you just briefly again. You see, Psalms 18 and 118, they're very similar. They have their own little ways of saying things, but you end up seeing the same wording from 18 as you do in 118. Okay? This is the right before. This is above the 14 years. You see that? We're still in the 7 here. This is above 14 years. What? What I'm about to show you in the start of Psalms 18 might put a little bit of panic, a little bit of fear into some of our thinking, but don't allow it to. I'm not saying it's necessarily that we're going to witness it, but we may. And the reason I want to tell you it like that is because we need to have our hearts prepared for things we may see at the point that will be taken, that the bride of Christ, those accounted worthy to escape all these things, will be taken. Okay? So I don't want you to have fear in it. But notice that it's above the 14 years, which goes through to here. You see, that's why in 33 or in 133, how great it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. That's what happens in the Jubilee when they all get their land. So this is above the 14 years. Uh-oh. That starts to ring a bell, doesn't it? Above 14 years. The above 14 years was the teaching of the days of the Son of Man, that 40 and 50 days, right? The 40 and the 10, that's before the 14 years begins. So we start to say, whoa, what's going on here? Well, wait till you see Psalms 18. Remember, we're looking at this hand relating to power. Let's have a read. I've told this, man, I've been talking about Psalms 18 for probably close to 3 years. Psalms 18 has not happened. All right? Has not happened. Watch this. The Lord is my rock and my fortress. He is my deliverer, to escape, to carry away safely, right? He is my deliverer, my God, my strength, in whom I will trust, my buckler and my horn of salvation and my high tower. Okay, that's Psalms 18, verse 2. I'll skip reading as I'm going. The sorrows of death have compassed me about. The sorrows of hell have compassed me about. In verse 6, in my distress, I called upon the Lord and cried upon my God. He heard my voice out of his temple and my cry came before him, even unto his ears. Here it comes. Then the earth shook and trembled, and the foundations also of the hills moved and were shaken, because he was wroth. There went up a smoke out of his nostrils, and fire out of his mouth devoured. Coals were kindled out of it. He bowed the heavens, and he came down, and darkness was under his feet. And he rode upon a cherub and did fly. Yea, he did fly upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness his secret place. His pavilion round about him were dark waters and thick clouds of the skies. At the brightness that was before him, his thick clouds passed, hailstones and coals of fire. Yea, hailstones and coals of fire. The Lord also thundered in the heavens, and the highest gave his voice, hailstones and coals of fire again. Yea, he sent out his arrows and scattered them, and he shot out lightnings and discomfited them. Then the channels of waters were seen, and the foundations of the world were discovered at thy rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of the breath of thy nostrils. Any ripping apart of the earth where the foundations were seen? Remember, I'm telling you, this is the above 14 years. He sent from above. He took me, and he drew me out of many waters. He delivered me. See? He delivered me from my strong enemy, from them which hated me, for they were too strong for me. Here it comes. Another couple verses. They prevented me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my stay. He brought me forth also into a large place. He delivered me. All right. Who's the deliverer? Hosea, right? He delivered me because he delighted in me. Here it is. The Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands. Remember the word power of hands? The hand, a hand, indication of power. Okay, according to the cleanness of my hands, he recompensed me. You see what's going on here, guys? There's somebody being rewarded. There's somebody being delivered in this. They're being rewarded when they're being delivered, and their hands are already cleansed. They already have a cleanness of hands. See, they already have a pure cleanness of hands. They don't need to make them clean. They're already clean. And these hands relate to Luke's hands that indicate power to a delivered group being rewarded. Who is this delivered group being rewarded? Who do we know in scripture who receives reward for their cleanliness, reward for being pleased? You see, here it is in Hebrews 11:5-6. Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found, because God had translated him. For before his translation he had this testimony, that he pleased God. What did it just say? The Lord was pleased because of the cleanness of my hands, right? That's why they're being recompensed with a reward. Verse 6, Hebrews 11:6. But without faith it's impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is God, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. So what happened? Enoch translated alive because he pleased God by having faith in him, believing that he was God, and that he was a rewarder of them that diligently sought him. Psalms 18, we're seeing chaos break out. Chaos break out. And we're crying to the Lord, Lord, deliver us, come and get us, save us. And what happens? The deliverer, the Lord, who is delighted in them. Okay? He delighted in them. See, to have pleasure, to be well pleased. You following? He's then rewarding him because he was pleased with him. He's delivering him because he's pleased in him as a reward for the cleanness and which is the bright cleansing, already washed clean pureness of these hands that are related to power. Why am I saying to prepare your hearts just in case? Because we've already talked about maybe seeing these things, remember? Do you remember that? Luke chapter 21, starting in verse 25 through 28. And there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the seas and the waves roaring. What can cause? Something hitting them, an earthquake, a splitting out where the foundations of the earth might be seen. Men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. The coals of fire, right? I mean, or the hailstones coming down. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. What did Psalms 18 say? For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. What are they doing? They're crying out, Lord, please come and get us. Those that you delight in, reward us for the cleanness of our hands. And here he is coming on a cloud. And it says, and when these things begin to come to pass, these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption is at hand. Whoa. Is it possible that parts of the world, or that the world seeing this and the bride may experience the very beginning of it? Because Luke 21 also said, when these things begin to come to pass. This is the beginning to come to pass. Is this that final little testing of the bride? Is she going to stand strong? Is she going to stand and remain steadfast in her love for the Lord? To be rewarded, being brought into a large place? in the third heaven. Remember, this is above the 14 years. Remember 2 Corinthians, right? Talked about this one in many videos recently, especially. I knew a man in Christ above 14 years ago. And this one is the one that goes like a rapture to the third heaven. Sounds like we're in this same conversation context going on, isn't it? So remember, this as much as I wanted to share that part, the main portion, the main portion that I wanted to bring clarity to, well, first of all, I think it was very important to say, hey, don't panic. Well, we might panic, but don't fear that we're being left behind. He's a rewarder. We may see these things as he's told us in Luke as well. Okay? But for those who are already white and pure and cleansed in the Lord, those with the power of the hand, like Luke said, this is the pre-trib being taken away, that pre-trib escape. And we know it by the purity of their hands, the hands of power, purity, and being rewarded as having been delivered. Now, look at what happens next. This is now related to year one. It doesn't mean everything in it is what happens during the whole year. All right? Is now the beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if we read in Psalms 24, it could have something relating to the sixth seal, either the beginning, the middle, the end, a little bit of everything. What you're about to see is the end of the sixth year of seals. Watch the difference in hands. Here is from the cleanness of my hands, 30:27. We're now going to go 6 years to the sixth seal, at the end of the sixth seal. And remember these things, because as we go forward and break down and show some of these other things, you're going to see this revelation in it. Listen to what it says. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. So you have the fullness of the world. That's not of the Jews, that would be of the Gentiles. So you have a fullness of the Gentiles. Okay? Let me go to something. You have the fullness of the Gentiles. Watch this. For he hath founded upon it the seas and established upon it the floods. Listen to this. Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord? Or who shall ascend to be in his holy place? Hello. When is the ascending of the hill of the Lord, guys? What happens at the end of the sixth seal? At the end of the sixth seal, they say, hide us from him who comes, hide us from him who sits on the throne, the face of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the time of his wrath is come. Remember, we said he's coming on heavenly Mount Zion. Remember that stone that crushes the 10 toes and destroys the statue at the end of seals becomes a great mountain. That is the mountain of the Lord, Mount Zion, when the Lord comes on Mount Zion. And it's saying it's now already been the fullness of the world. So the fullness of the Gentiles is the end of the sixth seal. And at the end of the sixth seal is when the mountain of the Lord is coming. And so who's going to get to ascend the mountain of the Lord? Here's the answer. Psalms 24, verse 4. 24, verse 4. He that hath clean hands. It's not even the same word. This is the one from 18, meaning these who have already clean, bright pureness of hands. This one, the clean, means blameless, clean, innocent. They've been made innocent. Here it is. Because they had to make clean. These guys just went through the seals. They had to be made clean. Whereas the other ones, they were already pure and white and clean. And look at the difference in hands. This was the one from Psalms 18. It's the same word, hands, but it's not the same word. It's the word 3709. And look at what it means. The palm, like the hollow of the hand or a palm, which also means as relates to a palm branch, to holding a palm branch or a branch in your hand. Whoa. If you just have a Bible and you don't have these, the Septuagint and these words connected, the Strongs, right? You're never going to understand this. So you've got a group in Psalms 18 who were clean and relate to the hand of power like Luke. And then you've got in Psalms 24 at the end of 6 years, a group related to the fullness of the world who will ascend the mountain of the Lord that he's come down on Mount Zion, who had to make their hands clean, and it relates to those who would be holding palm branches as in the palm of their hand. Whoa. Whoa, this is getting pretty wild, isn't it? Well, check this out. Remember we said, and I'm going to continue on it, remember the songs of ascent? Okay? People are saying, no, we're actually in, we should be in Psalms 21. No, we shouldn't. It turns out that there's a grouping of psalms called the Song of Ascents. And I didn't get it. It was sent to me after somebody had watched the video we did showing this about the chapters to years references. And they sent it to me after. You see, ours starts in 19 or 119. This is pre that I just showed you. This is the beginning of the Songs of Ascent. I didn't know that. It was sent to me after. You see, you have this one where they say from 20 to 134, but we are the Septuagint one that we study from. See, the Old Greek and the original Koine Greek translation of the Hebrew books. It is 119 to 133. They are the 15 years. See that? They are the 15 chapters to years that we reference as the end of days, the 14th to the 15th year. And there's actually a grouping out there in the world that's been known for, I don't know how long, probably hundreds of years, called the Song of Ascents. Why do you think that is? It relates to ascents, right? Ascending, the going up. Right? It's awesome, awesome stuff. Now, what we're going to show, what I'm going to get into now is we're going to keep building on that word for hands. How one had power. So the one that has power that related to Luke is the one that's gone. They were gone already pre-14. All right? They were gone in Psalms 18. Now here we are at the end of the 6th seal, and we're looking at this hand of power. But remember, I told you earlier, this incredible video, my wife, she made, oh, see, it was actually over a year ago. My wife made fun of me. she made fun saying that when I did this video, when I came across this revelation, my wife said, man, you don't remember what I told you an hour ago. You don't know when there's a difference of an S here or this there. Yet in scripture, you realize the difference between a capital S and a lowercase, if a word has an S or doesn't have an S. And now you're telling me there's a difference in the meaning between a comma followed by the word and, or if it was a comma without the word and, or if it was the word and without a comma. You're going to tell me that that has significance in the scripture and you found it? Right? It's so awesome. It is so awesome. And this revelation is what brought to the revelation that I'm going to share with you guys today and why I'm building on these things. Okay? It's the revelation of the comma and that gave me the answer. And then I went and proved it out within each gospel. Now remember, Psalms 24, okay? The fullness thereof of the world, to ascend the mount. Those that made their hands clean are going to be the ones who can ascend the mount at the fullness of the world, meaning at the fullness of the Gentiles. Well, let me show you something. In Revelation 18, well, that's okay, I don't need it. Oh no. Oh, I guess it's still recording. All right. So in Revelation, let me see. In Revelation chapter 7, we're talking about this group, right? From Psalms 18. Those whose hands relate to palms in their hands at the time of the rapture, who will get to ascend the mountain of the Lord, and it will be at the fullness of the world. Watch this. In Revelation chapter 7, after the 6 years, you see that? Who's going to get to ascend? Remember, it said, it didn't say, oh, they're ascending now. It said, who shall ascend? Meaning it's coming. Who's going to get to go up to the mountain of the Lord? Well, here they are. The 144,000 are sealed first, but then look at what we see. Starting actually in verse 9, Revelation 7, verse 9. After this, I beheld, and lo, a great multitude. See, this is the great multitude rapture. This is the main harvest after seals, after the 6 years of seals. The great multitude which no man could number, of all nations, kindred, and people, and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb. You see, that's what was coming at the end of the 6th seal. And who's going to get to go to this place? Those who have made their hands clean, and they're going to be like holding palm branches or palm branches in their hands. Check this out. And before the Lamb, clothed with white robes, comma, and palms in their hands. This was part of the revelation of the understanding of that comma and video. Okay? What it's telling us is there's a group that has white robes they were given, and there's a group there with palms in their hands. They're all one group making a great multitude, but there's some with white robes and there's some with palms in their hands. But together they're still a group. The comma and is meaning a separation, but adding them together. Okay? They make the great multitude. Who are the ones with the white robes? Well, we end up finding out later in verse 14. He said, do you know who these are? No, I not. No, I don't. These are they which came out of great tribulation and have washed their robes. What? They made their robes clean. They laundered them. Hello. Didn't it say those who will make, they had to be made clean? And who are these white robes as well? They were the ones that were made white, but who else were they? Who was this group that made them white? Here it is right here. The 5th seal, right? Here it is. Pale horse. And the 5th seal. I saw under the altar the souls of those that were slain. Sorry, give me 1 second. So you didn't know I just paused. My son was in for a second. So they that were under at the 5th seal, those who were under the altar, the souls of them that were slain for the word and for the testimony of God. Okay? They said, when are you going to avenge us? Right? When are you going to judge them and avenge us and avenge our blood? And what happens? In Revelation 6, verse 11, it says, white robes were given unto every one of them, and they were told to wait a little season till the rest of their brethren should be killed as they were, would be fulfilled. Okay? There was still more to be, more of the beheadings and so forth that are going to take place during seals. So they're told to wait a little bit longer. Okay? That's the group we're seeing here with the white robes in Revelation 7, verse 9. Those are the ones with the white robes. They were made white during that time. They're part of the great multitude. But remember what else it said? It said that those relating to hands in the 6th year, at the end of 6 years of seals, at Psalms 24, that their palm of the hand, their hand related to the palm or leaves of a palm tree. This group of people is a group of people in the palms of their hands holding palm tree branches. Isn't that amazing? The difference is what? Those who were under the altar and those that had died, and these are the alive in Christ. Together they are two separate groups of people. These were the alive, and these were the dead. Together they make the great multitude. Now, watch this. When you follow the story, as we've shared here in Mark chapter 9, remember, this great multitude is the group who went through seals. They are the sleeping church that went through seals. All right? The bride was taken at the beginning, that first hand I showed you guys. So if you go into Mark and you want to see this portion of time, watch this. First of all, let me set it up for you. You see this word white? So those that were made white, they had to make them white during the tribulation and made them white. Look at this word white. It means to white or whiten. They were made white, just like Psalms 24 said. But look at what Mark 9 says. Okay, here's the transfiguration story in Mark. And it's after 6 days. Why? What do you think that means? Of course, it's after the 6 years of seals. So it'd be sometime in the 7th year. And here's the Lord coming down. He's coming down from the mountain, right? Who's going to be able to go with the Lord and go up the mountain? And it says, and his raiment became shining, exceeding white as snow, so that no fuller on earth can whiten them. Remember, this one here was from Revelation 7. Those who had died and were given those white robes that were made white. The only other place this word is found, it's only used twice, is right here. It's the exact same time of after 6 days, or the type and shadow after 6 years. Oh, you're going to want to remember that. 6 days as 6 years, right? In Genesis, the after 7 days of the ark is after 7 years. And then you see it again after 7 days. It's a type and shadow of after 7 years. What I'm building up to show you is going to be the same with Christ's death and resurrection. But it's even more than that. Okay? So now you could see who this group is. This is that group we were talking about. But what about in relation to the palms in their hands? Right? Well, we have the story of the triumphal entry. Watch this. The story of the triumphal entry in Luke chapter 19. In Luke chapter 19, look at what we have. I've shared this story of the triumphal entry. I'm just making a point here with this palm in the hand, all right? We saw that the division of the comma and, but I want to finish this story with the palm in the hand. It says in Luke's triumphal entry, what does it say? They cast their garments down, they spread them on. You see, there's nothing. There's nothing about branches or palm branches or anything like that in Luke's story of the triumphal entry. When we shared on this in the past, it was such an awesome revelation because it's a type and shadow. So here's an example. The story of the transfiguration is a type and shadow of Christ coming at the start of his 40 days. The story of the triumphal entry is a type and shadow of the Lord coming at his 40 days. The resurrection is a type and shadow of the Lord coming for his 40 days. That's the type and shadow in all of the Luke. Okay? The same is applied then in Mark and in Matthew when he comes at the end of seals and when he comes at the end of trumpets. That's the revelation. Okay? So what we're reading here is we see there's nothing to do with branches, there's nothing at all. It's just those who laid their garments, and this has to do with him coming for 40 days. Remember in the previous video, the 40 days of the Son of Man that comes first? I shared with you guys that the Lord has not fulfilled the 40 days as Jonah did, because He has to what? He has to warn Jerusalem. So if this is a type and shadow of him coming at his triumphal entry to start the 40 days, look at what comes next. He warns Jerusalem, saying, if you'd only known in this time and in this time of your visitation, the things that belong to you, but you're about to be surrounded and laid flat with the ground, you and your children with you. Yikes. This is that exact type and shadow of the Lord coming for his 40 days and doing as Jonah did. He hasn't done it yet because this wasn't his 40 days from his resurrection, you see? So he hasn't given that 40-day warning yet as the Son of Man, as Jonah did. So we see there's nothing there with palm branches or anything. Look what happens when we go into Luke chapter 11. Here's the triumphal entry, in Mark. You go into Mark chapter 11 and you read his triumphal entry, and all of a sudden in verse 8, it says, and many spread their garments in the way, and others cut down branches off the trees and strewed them in the way. And they're crying and singing, Hosanna, right? Look at the word branches here. It's only used one time, which means it's only found in Mark. And if this triumphal entry is the type and shadow of when he comes at the end of seals, at the end of those 6 years, well, here we are again going into chapter 7 of Revelation. And who is this group holding these branches? Those who were trampled flat. Those who were trampled flat. Isn't that exactly what we were told? Isn't that exactly what we were told that would happen in Revelation 11, in Daniel 11, when the Antichrist comes, he would trample flat, right? Trample under his feet, stomp under his feet. Here it is here as well. The outer court, meaning the body, measure the spirit that's within, but leave the outer court. Measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months. This is the time of the Antichrist when he's given his power to continue. He will tread them underfoot. See, trample flat, tread underfoot. Let me show you one more spot. Daniel chapter 7. It'll show it to you crystal clear. What does the Antichrist do? That fourth beast. Okay, here's the fourth beast, and great iron teeth, and he brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet. He stamps them flat, you see? He's going to stamp them down, trample them. Prostate, meaning flat on the ground. So what is it saying about Mark's group? It's telling us that when the Lord comes at the end of the 6th seal, there's going to be those with branches in their hands. And they're going to lay them flat as the Lord is coming down the mountain. Whoa. You see this connection? I'm just sharing this with you to show you guys the connections that are going on with this, all right? Watch this in Matthew 21. It's a big video, guys. We see the triumphal entry in Matthew 21, and there's many other things going on in it, but let me show you this, because we're talking about the branches. Luke had nothing about branches. Mark had branches. We showed where it is in Revelation 7. How about this? This is beautiful. In Matthew 21, verse 8, and a very great multitude spread their garments in the way. Others cut down branches from trees and strewed them in the way. Look at the word branches. Remember this branches? Watch this. Here's the branches from Mark as trampled flat. Only used once. Why? Because it's only going to be used once. It's the portion referencing to Mark's group. Branches in their hands and those that have been trampled flat. This branches in Matthew, totally different. Here's the Mark one. Here's the Matthew one. Look at what it says. It's 2798, and it means like a twig or a branch as if broken off. As if broken off, like branches broken off a tree. Whoa. Why is that awesome? Because we're in Matthew. We're in Judah's portion, right? Check this out. Romans chapter 11. Okay, Romans chapter 11, starting in verse 11. I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? God forbid, but rather through their fall salvation is come to the Gentiles, for to provoke them to jealousy. All right, the Lord is using us. God is using us because of the fall of the Jews. The Lord is using us to bring them to jealousy. Use us, Lord, right? Use me. Verse 12. Now, if the fall of them be the riches of the world, what does that mean? Well, look at Jerusalem. Look at the Jews. They're a sliver of people on the earth. They've got the most Nobel Peace Prize. They're all doctors and lawyers and business, and they run the world, right? He literally told us in Romans 11, verse 12, that their fall is the riches of the world. Now do you get why they are the way they are in their wealth and all the things that they have? And the diminishing of them is the riches of the Gentiles. How much more will their fullness be? So their diminishing with the Lord is the riches of the Gentiles, but then how much more is their fullness going to be? If their fall and their diminishing, which gave way to the Gentiles' time, and during the time of their fall, I gave them the riches of the world, how much more when they come back in is their fullness going to be? Okay, listen to this. Verse 13. For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am an apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify mine office, if by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are my flesh, and might save some of them, right? Because some of them are still being saved. Here it comes. For if the casting off of them be the reconciling of the world, what shall be the receiving of them but life from the dead? What? Remember everybody saying, oh, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump, the dead in Christ shall rise, and we shall be changed in the moment, in the twinkling of an eye. Christians think it's for them. Christians think that's for them. You see, it is not for the Christian. You see, 1 Corinthians 15, who did we just read here that gets life from the dead? Right? Israel. The Jews do. Listen, I'm not going to go too far down to this because it's a separate rabbit hole. But it says, behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. Who did we just read will receive the resurrection from the dead? Who do you think are those dying under the altar that are going to be raised at the end of the 2,000 years? You see, at the last trump, the trumpet shall sound, and the dead in Christ shall be raised. We just read in Romans 11 that those who get to rise from the dead are his people who are going to spend the millennial reign with him. It's not the bride. It has nothing to do with that. It even says at the last trump, the dead shall be raised. What if you go to the last trump? Go to the last trump. In fact, in Revelation chapter 10, it says, and the mystery shall be revealed, right? At the beginning of the sound of the final trumpet. There's the seventh trumpet. The last trumpet. And what happens? Verse 17 and 18. Saying, we give thee thanks, O Lord God Almighty, which art to come, because thou hast taken to thee thy great power and has reigned. Verse 18. And the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come. Okay, the bulls are going to come. And the time that of the dead, that they should be judged, and that thou should give reward to thy servants, the prophets and the saints, which fear thy name. See, the prophets and the saints, the prophets, the ones that were killed early, that were God's chosen through Smyrna, the workers, right? And the saints that were killed from Smyrna, right? Those under the altar that are going to be raised from the dead. See, those who were waking up along the way. Let's go back to Romans 11. Because remember, I'm still tying this in. Okay? I'm still tying this in to what we were talking about in relation to they get the riches of the world until the fullness of the Gentiles comes in. Watch this. Let's go down to verse 22. Oh, no. Let's go verse 20. Well, because of unbelief, they were broken off. And thou standeth by faith. Be not high-minded, but fear. For if God spared not the natural branches, remember, they were broken off. For if God spared not the natural branches, take heed lest he also spare thee not. See, everybody says once saved, always saved. No, it's not. We've shown that many times, and this one is no different. Starting verse 22 now. But therefore, the goodness and severity, behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of God on them which fell, severity. But toward thee, goodness, if thou continue in his goodness. Otherwise, thou shalt be cut off. Once saved, always saved? You might want to rethink that. He's saying, if I cut off the branches that were mine and I grafted you Gentiles in, how much more easy would it be for me to just cut you off if you're not going to stay in my goodness and be obedient to me? I can cut you off very easily. And then he says, and they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in. If they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in. For God is able to graft them in again. For if thou wert the wild olive branch, right? The wild tree by nature, and you were grafted in, contrary to nature, how much easier would it be to put the natural one back in? What natural one back in? Matthew. Those broken ones. They're going to be now grafted back in. That's his coming in Matthew, right? That's the triumphal entry in Matthew I was just showing you. And as he's coming back, what's going to happen? Those broken branches are going to be grafted back in. Listen to this portion, and then we're going to carry on. So verse 25, Romans 11, verse 25. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles come in. What was the fullness of the Gentiles come in? Do you remember that? He said the world, right? He said the world. He gave them the world, and the fullness, shoot, where is it? Give me 1 second. And the fullness, watch this. There it is. For if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? So, what? If when he cast away the Jews and he's now turned to the Gentiles who were grafted into as a wild tree into the good tree, their casting away is the reconciling of the world until what? Until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. What is the fullness of the Gentiles? When the fullness of the world comes in. Did you get that? Are you following that? Here's what it is. Psalms 24. And the fullness thereof, the world, and they that dwell therein, who will ascend the hill after having cleansed their hands, which were the ones that had the palm branches that were flattened, and others holding them that were still alive. You see how awesome that is? I mean, it's there for us, guys. There's so many of these things just hidden in mysteries for us for so long. You see, one of the biggest pieces of this revelation and this building of it and going into the word hand and relating to power in 18, the escape of the bride portion, to this other hand being those that have the palm branches in their hands. One of the reasons that this was a great way to lead this all in and to build this all up was to reveal also this comma and this separation between the two groups of those that were dead and those that were alive when he came at the rapture, to be able to show that they were a marked group, that the palms and the branches didn't relate to the Luke group, that there was another then branch group that related to Matthew, and that group was a group of branches that had been broken back off. And when the Lord returns at that time for Matthew's group, they will be grafted back in, because the fullness of the Gentiles will have already been complete at the end of 6 years of seals during the 7th year Sabbath. You see how amazing that is? And this comma and was a big understanding of that separation between the dead and the alive. This comma and goes beyond that as well. And I've shared this before, and I want to share it here briefly because it's part of the understanding. You see, a lot of people get confused by this. In Revelation 12:14, we talked about it a few minutes ago. It says, and the woman being given 2 wings of a great eagle to fly into the wilderness, into a place where she is nourished for a time, comma, and times, comma, and half a time. That means 1 plus 2 plus a half. That is 3.5 years. This is the Psalms 90 and 10, we fly away portion. All right. It's the Psalms 90 and 10 that when you're looking at this, the 10 years, 70 to 80, and then a soon portion, which is 6 months, that's your 7 years of seals, 3.5 years of trumpets with the Lord, 10.5 years. And when Satan is cast down and Messiah is cut off, remember, we're coming full circle to this, and Messiah is cut off. This is where the woman flees into the wilderness for a time, comma, and times, comma, and a half, 3.5 years, which means that woman who was taken into safety into the wilderness in Revelation 12:14 will remain until the end of the 14 years, will remain till the end after the 7th trumpet is all done. All right. However, and this is why this comma and is so awesome in its revelation. When you go to Revelation or Daniel chapter 12, you see that Daniel is saying, oh, and the angel, how long will this last, oh Lord? How long is this going to go on? And why is he crying out like that? Because he's seeing a time of such absolute devastation and craziness. And why? Because the pit's been open. He's seeing at this point, the pit is open, Satan's on the earth, the pit is open, demons everywhere. He's seeing this craziness, and he's saying, how long is it going to last, oh Lord? And in Daniel 12:7, it says that it shall be for a time, comma, times, comma, and a half. There's no and here. So it means 1, 2 plus a half, 2.5 years. This 2.5 years, to quickly point out, this 2.5 years is right here in Daniel 26. From the time that Messiah is cut off, this is the 10.5 years after 3.5 years of trumpets. You see, then you see the people of the prince shall come and shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and there a flood See, and which shall be with the flood, and unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. This period of time right here, from Messiah's being cut off to the end of this verse, is the 2.5 years being talked about. This is the final year when the Lord returns to confirm the covenant, like we said, after 13 years. See that? So this revelation of understanding this comma and is priceless. It is so relevant and so important to understand this difference of, now where did it go? This difference of whether there's a comma and or no and just a comma. It's like saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a half. Well, that would be 5.5. But if I had 1 and 2 and 3 and a half, well, you'd be 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus a half. That would be 6.5. It sounds trivial, but it's never been understood before. You know, we've been talking about it for the last 2.5, 3 years, but it hasn't been understood, or the last year and a bit. Okay, but it hadn't been understood before that. This is not the entire time of the last 3.5 years of trumpets. You see, it's the same period of time, but that one in Daniel is cut short by 1 year compared to the one in Revelation 12. Because I'm building this on purpose, be aware, right? It's on purpose because this is only a period of time from his being cut off is only 2.5 years. Then he's going to return and fulfill that final year. Okay? Which is like Zechariah 14. Now, that was all important to say and to reveal and to bring to light to you guys, because what I'm about to show you now, after laying that foundation of these different groups and the way they're seeing things and how to count the season and times, is to also bring to light to us this season and time that is fast approaching upon us. This season and time of the season of Passover that's coming. This time of his resurrection that I showed you guys, that we've spoken about it many times in the last year and a bit, but in particular recently, that the reason in Luke's resurrection only, out of the synoptic gospels, only Luke says that when they went into the sepulcher and saw not the body of the Lord Jesus, it is a type and shadow for us that the bride, his portion of his body, where the two will become one, she will not be there when they go and look in the sepulcher. Yes, this year. Okay? Wanted me to say it? There you go. Yes, this year. We're going to talk to some things about this in Peter that you're going to see. Remember, in the resurrection story, you see Peter in Luke then goes and runs. In Mark, you don't see him go and run. They're to go meet him. And in Matthew, there's no mention of Peter in the resurrection story. Okay? They're all giving us, this is all giving us clues. I'm going to show you something about Peter that happens in either Luke 22 or Luke 23. Because Peter is a type and shadow of the church, the sleeping church that's left behind. I'm going to show you why it says that, why it's going to say what I'm going to show you about him in Luke, because the bride will have already been taken. And Peter is about to be hounded by Satan, right? By the Antichrist and Satan. You see, what you're about to see is just craziness in its revelation. Okay? Let's go right to the count first. I'm going to show you guys the count, and then I'm going to explain it, because you're going to say, what the heck? Okay? Watch this. Okay? Jesus, we know Jesus has been crucified now. He was taken, he's been crucified, but he's not buried yet. So it's still the day of Passover. Okay? It's during the sunny time of Passover, during the morning, right? He was from 6 to 9, we were told, right? From the 6th hour, there was darkness until the 9th hour. And we know that Jesus cries out, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. Okay? So now we know he's dead. And then we have this guy, Joseph, right? He was waiting. He's a just man. He's waiting on the consolation, right? He's waiting on the kingdom of God. And what happens? In verse 52, Luke 23, verse 52, this man went unto Pilate and begged the body of Jesus and took it down. It still had to be Passover. It had to be before sunset. It wasn't, people will tell you the story because they can't reconcile the days. I'm going to reconcile these days for you once and for all. It blew my mind. I should have done this video earlier today, but I was talking with our brother Mark as well. I was talking to my wife about it. I've been so fired up about this. And he took it down. So people will say, oh, well, he went and bought fine linen and he did this. Oh, it must have been a long time. No. It still had to be on Passover before sunset. So what happens? And he took it down. Okay, and he took down and wrapped in linen and laid it in the sepulchre that was hewn in stone, wherein never a man before was laid. And that day was the preparation. Do you guys know what the word preparation is? All Jews know it. It's the day before Sabbath. Every Sabbath, they're not allowed to work. So the day before, right up to before sunset, they're allowed, they prepare. I told you guys of a sister I used to talk with all the time, a Jewish sister in Christ. And she talked about this preparation with me a long time ago. And you can talk to Jews. I mean, everybody knows what it means. It's the day before the Sabbath. Well, do you realize that Passover is it's not a Sabbath? It's not a day where you can't work. The preparation day was Passover. And you say, well, of course it was. That's not a big mystery. It says, and that day was the preparation. Well, if he's taking Jesus down and he's putting him in the grave, well, obviously, Passover is the preparation day, which means the day before a Sabbath. Okay? And the Sabbath day drew on. And the women also, which came with them from Galilee, followed after and beheld the sepulchre and saw how the body was laid. And they returned and prepared spices and ointments and rested the Sabbath day according to the commandment. So Passover day, the 14th of Nisan, is the day of preparation as well, because it's before Sabbath. Okay? So the preparation day is Nisan 14, Passover. Jesus was taken down well before sunset. We know that it was from 3 to 9 a.m. Right? So then he was taken down not too long after that. And they still had plenty of time for sunset to go and, of sun before sunset to go and buy the linen and then to lay them in the sepulchre. And then the women returned home and they were preparing spices and ointments. And they finished preparing them before sunset because then the Sabbath day came. So you have the 14th and then the 15th is a Sabbath day. Well, the 15th is also what? It's also the first day of unleavened bread, right? It's that week of unleavened bread that now starts. Okay? So it's a high holy day on top of it where they can't do any servile work. So yes, it was still a Sabbath. And this is what I'm showing you guys. It would have been a Sabbath regardless in 33 AD. Remember I showed you guys at the beginning? The Jews know that it's the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, the 29th, but they still just keep it always on a weekend to make life easier. But the truth is 8/15. So the 15th, not only was it actually a Sabbath, and as a Saturday Sabbath like they would do it today, it's also always a day of non-work because it's the first day of Passover week, of unleavened bread. Always a Sabbath. All right? So that's what we're talking about. So preparation day, he was then taken down after he died. They wrapped him. They went home, prepared spices, and then they took the day off for the Sabbath. What happens on the 24th chapter? And then it says, and now upon the first day of the week, very early in the morning, they came to the sepulchre, bringing the spices which they had prepared, and certain others with them. And they found the stone rolled away from the sepulchre, and entered in and found not the body of Christ. What the heck? Did you guys count that? This is, I questioned this a while ago, and I'm sure many of you have questioned it as well. How on earth is it preparation day is the 14th of Nisan? Okay, let's look at it like this, guys. We know that the Hebrew day, okay, we're looking at a Gregorian calendar with the Hebrew dates. So we would say it goes from here to here for Nisan, all right? I mean, for the Hebrew calendar. But for easy visuals, because it's still exactly the same, it's true, we're going to say that this begins the evening, and then to the day, and then to the evening, all right? Their day is going from evening to evening. So the middle is about the day. So 6 o'clock at the evening sunset, 6 o'clock in the morning sunrise, 6 o'clock in the evening sunset, okay? So that in a Hebrew looking at this whole thing is the 14th of Nisan. Starting at evening, ending at evening, starting at evening, ending at evening. So let's have a closer look at this. The day of his crucifixion, he was crucified in the morning from 6 to 9 a.m. in the morning of Nisan 14 Passover. He's put in the grave, obviously, before sunset. Okay? So he had to be put in the grave at some point a little bit before sunset. We know that he went and bought the linens. Then they wrapped him in linen. The women saw him go in where he was laid. And then the women had enough time to go home and prepare some spices. So maybe it was a couple hours before sunset, 2-3 hours before sunset, and gave him time to prepare spices. But as soon as sunset came, he was put in maybe a couple hours or so before sunset, maybe longer, who knows? But give or take, somewhere in that period. And they took what? The Sabbath off. It was then the Sabbath. No servile work. They couldn't do anything. But then what did it say in chapter 24? Upon the first day of the week. The 16th is the first day of the week. The morrow after the Sabbath. And they came, not in the night, but they came very early in the morning. What the heck is going on? He was only in the grave about a day and a half? What? You're following what I'm laying down, right? Preparation was the 14th. Then it was the Sabbath. And then they show up on the first day of the week early in the morning. He was only in the tomb a little over a day and a half. But as we keep reading, we say, well, wait a second. Let's read in chapter 24, verse 6 and 7, and then we'll go a little bit further down as well. He is not here, but he is risen. Okay, remember the two angels And they freak out when they see the two angels. And they say, why you seek the living among the dead? They say, he is not here, but he is risen. Remember how he spake unto you when he was yet in Galilee, saying, the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, comma, and be crucified, comma, and the third day risen again. Okay? And now go tell the others. And so they go and they tell Peter, and Peter freaks out and he runs with them and they go and see. But then as we keep reading, as we saw up here, it said, and the third day rise again. It's not after 3 days, it's the third day. Well, here we are in verse 13 now on the road to Emmaus. And it says, behold, two of them went the same day to the village called Emmaus. Okay, so the same day, the third day. And they talked together of all the things which had happened. And it came to pass that while they communed together and reasoned, Jesus himself drew near and went with them. But they had no idea who he was, right? And he's saying, what manner of communications are these? Why are you guys so sad? And one of them said, whose name is Cleopas, answered, man, are you a stranger? Don't you know what happened these past days? And Jesus, he must have just been laughing inside, just giggling, right? Saying, what things? I love it. Saying what things? And they go on to say, Jesus, concerning Jesus of Nazareth, which was a prophet, mighty in deed and word, before God and all people. Here it comes. Verse 20 and 21. And how the chief priests and rulers delivered him. What did they do? Well, they delivered him, right? They brought him forth. They put him in prison for a bit, right? Delivered him to be condemned to death and have crucified him. But we trusted that it had been he which should have redeemed Israel. And beside all this, today is the third day. Here, check this out. Bright red for a reason. Since these things were done. What? What do you mean these things? What do you mean? Shouldn't it be since he was crucified? Since this thing was done? Since that happened? This word redeemed, by the way, is only used 3 times, and it's only once in the Gospels. Something about a redeemed has already happened. This is the bride, guys. Oh, I'm not giving you the answer yet. But did you see this? Since these things were done. So it's the third day since these things were done. Since what things were done? How the chief priests and our rulers delivered him. Wait a second. What are you saying? You're saying since these things were done? And he started off by saying when he was taken and delivered, then condemned to death, then crucified? Oh, it gets exciting, brothers and sisters. Watch this. Watch this. Let me prove this out to you. Okay, here's the disciples. They remember, actually back here, he wants to have his supper with the disciples, right? What does he tell them? Go and prepare a place for me. Go and, let's see. Bearing a pitcher, follow him into the house. We're in Luke 22, verse 11. And you shall say to the good man of the house, my master saith unto thee, where is thy guest chamber, where I shall eat the Passover with my disciples? And he shall show you a large upper room furnished, there make ready. Because what's going to happen? There's a couple disciples. Remember, he sent a couple of disciples to go and do this. And to prepare what? To prepare the upper room that you're going to find furnished, there make ready. And they went and found as he had said unto them, and they made ready the Passover. Do you guys know when this is? Remember that there's an argument about all this, right? These things are debated like crazy. I'm going to show it to you also in Mark and in Matthew. I'm going to show you where the confusion of after 3 days comes from. It's beautiful. So he says, so he tells them to go, but when are they going? They're going to make ready the Passover. It's not Passover yet, but they're going to get things ready for the Passover. People have said, how is it that he was the Passover lamb, yet he celebrated or observed the Passover with them and was still crucified on Passover? What happened after these guys prepare it? They prepared and they made ready the Passover. And when the hour was come, did you hear that? And when the hour was come, he sat with the 12 apostles with them. And he sat unto them with desire. I have desired to eat the Passover with you before I suffer. For I say unto you, I will not eat any more and drink of the cup, and so on and so forth, right? But what did he say first? And when the hour was come. Do you guys know when this was? It was right here. As soon as the hour of Passover began, you see, at sunset, he told these guys right here to go prepare. And then at sunset, it says, and the hour was come. What hour? Passover. Passover, the 14th of Nisan had just begun. And what is he doing as it's just begun? He's observing Passover with them. He's doing it at just after sunset with them in the evening portion of Passover, the beginning of Nisan 14. And then they reckon amongst themselves who's the greatest, right? And they have all this confirmation, all these conversations. And then Jesus says, you know, I'm going to appoint unto you guys are going to have your own kingdom. Like my Father gave me a kingdom, you guys will have a kingdom. And you're going to judge the nations and so forth. And then look what he says to Peter. Remember, Peter represents the church, brothers and sisters. So here we are in the beginning of the 14th of Nisan, in the evening portion as the sun had just set. They had finished eating up, and he tells Simon, behold, Satan has desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. Remember, guys, who does Peter represent? The sleeping church that is going to be what? Sifted, right? They're going to be sifted. They're going to go through the tribulation, through the testing. They're going to be sifted. They're going to be beaten on that tribulation, right? On that tribulum. Verse 32 says, but I have prayed for thee that what? That you can be taken out? Nope. But I have prayed for thee that thy faith fail not. And when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. Peter, church, tribulation, being sifted as wheat, but I will give you the strength, church, to not fail. And when you fully, truly become converted, go and strengthen your brethren during that time. See that? Peter is the type of church. That's why you see it the way we explained earlier. He comes after the bride escapes and he's freaking out as to what happened. In Mark, he doesn't freak out and doesn't even run to the tomb because now he's going to be going to meet the Lord. And then in Matthew, he's not mentioned because he's already gone. Okay? And then he's telling these guys, look, when I sent you out and you have 2 swords, now they're on the Mount of Olives. So maybe this is a couple hours later. It's not too far. These things were all happening very close to where they were. And what else would have happened? Well, remember, he had the Passover with all 12 of them. So when he is now left and they've all left, like going for a walk, and he's going to go pray, they stay a stone's throw away. But where's Judas? Judas has already slithered away. He's already gone to go tell his buddies, hey, give me my money. I'm going to tell you and bring you to this guy. So where are we? We're maybe a couple hours into the evening of Passover day, okay, of the 24 hours of Passover. And what happens, we see when Jesus was praying, in Luke's guys, they fell asleep because of the sorrow. They saw Jesus' blood and falling down from drops, and they fell asleep because they were so pained and seeing him go through that. But all of this is still happening in the beginning of the evening of the 14th of Nisan. And then what happens? Judas is coming to betray him. And then Jesus says, you coming to betray me with a kiss. And all of a sudden, who was it? One of them takes a sword and ends up cutting the guy's ear off. Jesus heals the ear. You think that would have been a crazy miracle for them, right? Listen to what happens. Verse 53, Luke 22, verse 53. When I was daily with you in the temple, you stretched forth no hands against me. But this is your hour and the power of darkness. You ready? And they took him. And they took him. When did Jesus get taken? Oh, give or take a couple hours, right? 2, maybe 3 hours in the very early part after sunset for the beginning of Nisan. Okay? Remember it. They took him. Luke 22, 54. This is when they took him. You got the denials and so forth by Peter. And the men that held Jesus mocked him and smote him, and they blindfolded him. And they said, prophesy then, who's hitting you? And they were blasphemous among many other things to him. Are you ready? And as soon as it was day, the elders of the people and the chief priests and the scribes came together and led him into the council, saying, art thou the Christ? Tell us. And he said unto them, if I tell you, you will not believe. Remember, I said he didn't go around telling everybody he was the Christ. And if I also ask you, you will not answer me, nor let me go. Hereafter shall the Son of Man be sitting on the right hand of the power, okay? And he goes on to say that. But you see that he was taken now. When was he taken? Early portion is when they laid their hands on him and took him. And now we just read that now morning came. So they took him in the evening. Now morning comes. They bring him before council to accuse him, right? And now he's before Pilate and so forth. We all know that story, and sends him to Herod. And now he's given a gorgeous robe. Remember, that's the white gorgeous. We say that bride, right? The white for the bride. Mark, he gets the purple. Matthew, he gets the scarlet. And so what do we see? And the same day, Pilate and Herod were made friends. We all know that story. Now Jesus is going to the crucifixion. Okay, now's the time of the crucifixion. And look at what he says to the people. This is only in Luke, by the way. This is very scary, very terrifying to think about. We've talked about it before, right? In Leviticus 26, right? We said that it's going to get very bad for them. Remember, as the triumphal entry, and Jesus then gives warning to Jerusalem, and we said that that's one of the types and shadows when this is all going to begin, right? He warns them like he's supposed to, like Jonah, right? He said he's going to do as Jonah did. Well, remember, we also said that once this happens to Israel, there's going to be a famine, but God turns against them because they failed to observe their Sabbaths, their Sabbath years of rest for the land. And so he's going to make it just terrible to the point that it's going to be really bad for the people and those with children and eating kids. I mean, it was terrible stuff That's not me. That's in Leviticus 26. Well, listen to what he tells them here only in Luke as he's is going at the crucifixion here. Luke 23, verse 28 and 29. But Jesus, turning unto them, the women that were there bewailing, right? Turned unto them and said, Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming. Okay? For behold, the days are coming, in the which they shall say, Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bare, and the paps that never gave suck. They shall say, then shall they begin to say, the mountains fall on us, and to the hills cover us. For if they do these things in a green tree, what does a green tree mean? I don't want to sound perverted or anything, but in a wet tree. Yes, that's what I'm getting at. What shall be done in the dry? Because what? Do you understand? I'm not going to say what it means. I'm hoping you guys can understand it for yourselves. It's going to be terrible. If they do those things in a wet tree compared to if they do it in a dry tree, they're going to be saying, blessed are the barren and those who can't have kids, because of what's going to be taking place. What does this relate to? You got it. The beginning of tribulation. And this is being spoken to the Jews. This is over in Israel first. Okay? And so we know then he's on the cross and they're saying these things to him. And like I said earlier, then there he is on the cross. We know it's from 6 to 9 a.m. So where are we at? Now we're like 6 to 9 a.m. We're in the early part of the morning. We're right here. He was taken about right here. Now it's morning and he's at the crucifixion. It's 6 to 9. And he says, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. So now he's died. Okay? They found out if he was dead. They said, yes, he was dead. And now Joseph is been given the right to have the body of Jesus, and he takes it down and wraps it. It says that that day was the day of preparation. So this whole day, remember, we're going from here to here, evening to evening. This whole day is the day of preparation. This whole day. From when he was taken in the evening, to then the morning brought before councils, to then brought to the cross and killed, to now taken down from the cross after he went and bought the linens. And when he's taken down, he's put in the sepulcher before sunset, and the women are going to make spices, prepare spices before sunset of that evening. That day was the day of preparation. He's now in the grave. They take the Sabbath day off for rest as it was commanded unto them. And they return not in the evening, but in the very early morning of the third day. Do you follow? One day, preparation. Second day, and it doesn't mean preparation of the Passover and all of that. It means preparation day because the Sabbath day is next, which just by chance is also the day of Holy Convocation of no servile work because it's day one of unleavened bread. So no servile work regardless. And they came early in the morning on the third day. But it still doesn't mean he was killed. Or sorry, that he was in the grave for 3 days. So what the heck is going on? I thought he was in the grave. You could say, okay, well, he was in the grave and resurrected on the third day, and it would be 2.5 days in the grave. But that's not what it said, was it? Day of preparation, Sabbath day, and on the third day. Well, let's keep going. You guys are going to see this. You're going to see this all open before you here. You're going to see it's proven in each gospel. We can go into Mark 14. Let's go into Mark 14. What are some of the main things to show? He's talking about the promise of money. Again, the guest chamber, make ready. We got different things within it because they will also mean different things during the end. We've shared on many of these things. He says, but after that I am risen, I will go before you into Galilee. Well, isn't that interesting? Because in Mark and in Matthew, not in Luke, listen to what he says. You see, the angel tells them, they go to see at the grave, and it says, he is risen, he is not here. Behold the place where they laid him. In verse 7, but go your way, tell his disciples and Peter that he goeth before you into Galilee. There shall you see him, as he said unto you. Well, that's interesting because that's not what it said in Luke. In Luke, those two angels told them that as he told you when he was yet with you in Galilee. Do you know why? Because Mark and Matthew will have seen him coming first. Remember, after the 6 days and the type and shadow for the end of days, Mark, the end of seals after 6 days, they see him coming, but the rapture isn't happening yet. So he's going before them to that place, and they're going to meet him on the mountain after. When you go to Matthew's version, Matthew's is very similar. And it says, verse 7, and go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead, and behold, he goeth before you into Galilee. Luke 24. You're going to love the climax. Is just building and building. He said, remember how he spake unto you when he was yet in Galilee. So he's no longer in Galilee. He's saying, remember I told you when we were there? But in Mark and Matthew, they're to still go meet him there. That's pretty wild. This is building, right? So let's keep going. So they eat, they had the Lord's Supper. Walk forward a little while, watch 1 hour. Here it is too. It is enough, for the hour is come. Behold, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Mark 14:41. Okay? Now he's saying, look, it's enough. It's time to go. It's time for my hour to come, that the Son of Man be betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise up, let us go. Lo, he that betrayeth me is at hand. And of course, we see now this point with the betrayal by Judas. And in verse 46, and they laid their hands on him and took him. And they laid their hands on him and took him. When? It's still the day of the preparation. Okay? And all the other apostles, they fled, and it fulfills scripture that they would flee. Now what happens? Mark 14, verse 58. We heard him say, I will destroy this temple made with hands, and within 3 days, I will build it again without hands. And here, sitting on the right hand, we heard him say this. Now, Peter denies. Let's go into chapter 15 of Mark. Look at this. Straightway in the morning. So obviously, again, proving he was taken in the evening. Those things were said against him. He was put in the prison. And now straightway, first thing in the morning, they take him to the counselors and so on and so forth. It's the same type of story, spoken of a little bit different. This time we see clothed in purple. We've talked about that many times. And here he is. He's about to be crucified. The death of Jesus. We know it's again the 6th to the 9th hour. But this time, as we've shared before, he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? We know that this means left behind, because the Mark group is the left behind during the time of seals. Okay, that's the type and shadow of what it's telling us, or what he's telling us by saying that here. Now the veil rips from top to bottom, and there were many other women that had come with them, and this is about Joseph again. So Joseph and the women that came with him, that followed him from Galilee, okay, they're now there. They've watched this whole thing, and you'll notice that Jesus doesn't say woe unto them and so forth at this point, right? That was only found in Luke. But now look at what it says again in Mark 15 verse 42. And now when the even was come, because it was the day of preparation, that is the day before the Sabbath. So just in case we weren't getting it, it's getting pretty clear, isn't it? And then what happens, verse 44, and Pilate marveled. So Joseph is now asking for the body, and Pilate marveled if he were already dead. And calling unto him the centurion, he asked him whether he had been dead in a while. And the centurion answered and said, yes, that he was dead. So he gave Joseph the body. And what do we read? He bought fine linen and took him down. So obviously it was still Passover. It was still the day of preparation. They wrapped him. They put him in the sepulcher. They rolled the rock over. And Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, beheld where he was laid. You come to chapter 16, and you see, and when the Sabbath was passed, Mary Magdalene and these women who had had the spices came very early in the morning on the first day of the week. Again, he was not 3 days in the grave. Or on the third day, meaning, 2 days and something, 2.5 days in the grave. It's like a day and a half. Again. You see, and we see Peter not running to the grave, right? Go tell his disciples and Peter that he goes before you into Galilee, and there you're going to see him. Peter doesn't freak out. He doesn't go run after him. And then we see, now when Jesus was risen, early the first day of the week, he appeared to Mary Magdalene first. Well, look at this. They came very early in the morning. Jesus shows up probably a couple hours later to her and appears to him. What's the first day of the week? Early in the morning of the first day of the week. Right here. In an evening to evening, first day of the week is right here, early in the morning. So what the heck is going on? Well, we're going to go a little bit further. Let's go into Matthew. Matthew 26. A little sip of cold coffee and then some water. Now watch this. We see the story building here in Matthew, and you see only in Matthew's version do we have the betrayal of Jesus, where it says not only he was given money or he was given coin, or however it's worded in Luke and in Mark. Only in Matthew are we told that he would receive 30 pieces of silver for it. Okay, we're given the exact number. And now the first day of the week for unleavened bread, Jesus and the disciples, the time was at hand to keep the Passover. So again, they're about to have this Passover. They're about to have the supper. We know now Judas is going to betray him for 30 pieces of silver. We know that those 30 pieces of silver, they didn't want them in I'm going to show you. They didn't want it in the temple after, right? So we see that again, Peter's denial. But after I am risen again, I will go before you into Galilee. So this is where he's telling the Mark group, I'm going to go before you and you're going to meet me there. In Mark, he said, I'm going to go before you and I'm going to meet you there. In Luke, he says, like I told you when we were there. Okay? That's part of the revelation of it. So then we see when Jesus goes to pray, we know now the betrayal's coming, right? You know not which hour. Then we read here in Matthew 26, verse 45. Then cometh he to his disciples, and he saith unto them, Sleep on now, and take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Still the Passover day, because he observed the Passover with them very early in the evening as the beginning of Passover started in the nighttime portion. Rise, let's be going. Behold, he is at hand, that doth betray me. And of course, we know now he that betrayed him gave unto them a sign. And of course, they come. We see in verse 50, then came they and laid hands on Jesus and took him. Notice how all three of them have told us that. They laid hands on him and took him in the beginning portion of the evening of Passover, but after he had had time to eat with them, and then Judas snuck away as they went out to talk and to pray, and Jesus went to pray in the mountain. They finished the prayer, they come down, and there he is now coming back with the people, having betrayed Jesus. And only in only in Matthew does he tell us 30 pieces of silver. It gets better here in Matthew. So again, the cutting off the ear, the story is a little bit different. Thinkest thou that I cannot pray? Don't worry, I can send legions of angels if I wanted to. But the scriptures need to be fulfilled, right? We all know that story. And all the disciples, that it might be fulfilled, the rest of the disciples and stuff, they fled, of course. Then we see he's being brought to them, okay? And said, fellow, I'm able to destroy the temple. They're trying to accuse him and say that he would rebuild it in 3 days. Hereafter, sitting on the right hand of heaven, of the Father. Watch this, going into 27. When the morning came. So again, this is all on track. He eats his Passover early on Passover with them. They come and take him. They take him to prison. He's brought into prison and kicked and punched and all those things. And then early in the morning, again, all three of them have told us that. Judas ends up hanging himself. All right. So we read the story, and he cast down the 30 pieces of silver in the temple because he felt so bad. Obviously, he was so disgusted, right? That he takes the 30 pieces, he brought them into the elders of the temple, saying, I have sinned in that I have betrayed the innocent blood. And they said, what is that to us? See thou to that. And he cast down the pieces of silver in the temple and departed and went and hanged himself. And the chief priests took the silver pieces and said, it is not lawful for to put them into the treasury, because it is the price of blood. And they took counsel and bought with them the potter's field to bury strangers in. Therefore that field was called the field of blood unto this day. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, that they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him valued at, whom they of the children of Israel did value, and gave them for the potter's field. You want to see something? Remember we told you Zechariah is the 14 years, but the imagery is the side of the Jews. It relates to Matthew's group. And we showed how Hosea is to the Gentile/church side. And it starts with the escape of the bride. Go get your Gentile bride. Okay, Hosea is to that group. And Paul tells us in Romans as well that Hosea, who isn't my bride, Jesus said, will become my bride. And they who are not my people will become my people. He said it was in Hosea. Zechariah is the 14 years of 14 chapters written to the Jews. Now, remember what I was telling you? When Messiah is cut off in the big picture of the end, do you remember what I was telling you, that the 2.5 days has a type and shadow as 2.5 years? Just as the 7 and the 7 in Genesis days are a type and shadow for the years, that the after 6 days and after 6 days in Mark and Matthew are as a type and shadow of after 6 years of seals and after 6 years of trumpets. Okay, all of these things. Well, the Christ and his death, which is a 2.5 year image, revelation that I'm showing you. Remember, Satan, his time will be times and a half, 2.5 years from the time when Messiah is cut off before he returns, 2.5 years later. Do you see this time? So in the big picture, it would be around, chapter, that would relate to 10.5 years. Maybe chapter 11, right? Some chapters, some books, maybe chapter 10, maybe some books, chapter 11. Well, how about Zechariah? 10 years have passed, so the half can be found in chapter 11. And we're talking about Matthew's time and trumpets. What do you think we see? Well, we see the vintage of old has been cast down. That's Satan being cast down. And look at what we see. Watch this. Where is it? They're going to eat everyone, the flesh of another. I mean, you're talking about the pit opening, right? Jesus then breaks his staff beauty and cuts it asunder, that I might break my covenant that I made with all people. Why is Jesus breaking his covenant? Because Satan's being cast down, or has been cast down. So he's got to break his covenant. It's the time when he's being cut off. But you want to see this relation to it being cut off? Here it comes. Zechariah 11, 12, and 13. And I said unto them, if ye think good, give me my price, and if not, forbear. So they weighed for my price 30 pieces of silver. Now people will say, well, this is a type and shadow of what was coming in the future. That's right. And it's about to replay in the future. Verse 13. And the Lord said unto me, cast it unto the potter, a goodly price that I was prized of them. And I took the 30 pieces of silver and cast them to the potter in the house of the Lord. When is that period? 10.5 years in. Psalms 90 and 10, 70 to 80 then soon. And then a period of 2.5 years as the time when Messiah was cut off for 2.5 days. Are you following? Are you following these marvelous, God-given, Holy Spirit-led revelations? Where's Zechariah? Zechariah 11, 10.5 years in. To the end of chapter 13, or to the end of the 13th year, is 2.5 years. Let's finish this up in Matthew, because like I told you, that is not the entirety of the time he was in the grave. Okay? So we got that now. We've talked about that even before. Now we can see this connection. You see, I believe many people, I know when I was talking to our brother Mark earlier, he said the same thing as me. He says, I wondered, how do we have this connection to when Messiah is cut off at the mid-trumpets, yet it's only 2.5 years? If we're following the type and shadow, then Messiah shouldn't have been after 3 days. It must have been 2.5 years or 2.5 days. And the reason is because every single piece of scripture that we revealed in the end of times revealed to us that Messiah being cut off at the mid trumpets would be a period of only 2.5 years. Yet we've been told that he was in the grave and then resurrected after 3 days. Well, that doesn't work. It's because the truth of the cutting off is the 2.5 years is going to represent 2.5 days. But there's even more to it. Watch this. Now we see again Jesus about to be crucified, and he answered all the people, his blood be on us and on our children, is what they said. We see that he's now clothed this time in scarlet. Okay? He was the bride, wedding, gorgeous white bride color in Luke. He was purple in Mark, which is the seals tribulation, and he is scarlet, which is the trumpets time, Judah's time. All right? And then we keep reading. Here is, of course, his crucifixion, the King of the Jews. We see it's again the 6th to the 9th hour. And here he says the same thing as Mark. My God, why have you left me behind? Because Mark's group left behind, like we said, and Matthew's group is left behind. In Luke's group, he says, into your arms, Father, I commend my spirit. That's the bride being taken to the third heaven. Like Paul said in 2 Corinthians 12:2, that above 14 years. And we see that he yields up the ghost. And what do we see? The veil of the temple was rent in two from top to bottom. And the earth did quake, and the rocks rent, and the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints which slept arose and came out of the graves after his resurrection. Hello. Did you see that in Mark? Did you see that in Luke? Only in Matthew do you see it. Do you understand why now in Romans 11 it was that to the Jews, that if all this happened and I still did all these things to them and I did all this greatness for you Gentiles, how much more am I going to do to them but the resurrection of the dead? Remember at the end of Daniel chapter 12, he says, sleep in your plot and you'll be raised at the last day. They're going to rise from the dead. His chosen people. Right, the exact reason it's in Mark or in Matthew. Okay, now let's keep going. Jesus begged. So now we see again, Joseph begged for the body, and then Pilate commanded the body to be delivered. Oh wait, you know what? Is this the one? Okay, yeah. And begged the body to be delivered, and laid in the new tomb, hewn without rock. And Mary Magdalene and Mary, they saw sitting over against the sepulchre. So again, same type of story. They see where he's being laid in the tomb. Now listen to this. Now the next day, this is where the whole world of churchianity, because of their foundation. Remember I said the problem is we've all been taught with a foundation of Matthew. They all just think it's another perspective for us to understand into Mark and in Luke. No, it's not. It's different groups of time. And with the foundation of Matthew, the whole world's been taught from a Jewish perspective. From the time of great tribulation and trumpets, it's not for us. Listen to what it says. Now the next day that followed the day of preparation. So obviously, again, the 14th was the day of preparation. He's already in the grave. So it's the day after the day of preparation. So meaning it's the Sabbath day. All right. The chief priests and Pharisees came together unto Pilate, saying, Sir, we remember that the deceiver said while he was yet alive. See, that's how you know this is the Sabbath day. While he was yet alive, he said, after 3 days, I will rise again. Did you catch that? When do we find Jesus saying that this would be after he died? Who's having this conversation? The chief priests and the Pharisees are the ones talking to Pilate, and they think they understood that Jesus said he would rise after 3 days from his death. Let me show you something. Let me show you something in Matthew. Is it? Here it is. Is it this one? Remember this story in Matthew 22? There was the woman, and she married the first brother. The brother died, and they tried to trick him up. You know, she married all 7 brothers, never had any kids, and then finally she died. When they get to heaven, whose wife is she going to be? Listen to what Jesus answered and said unto them, you do err, not knowing the scriptures, nor the power of God. For in the resurrection, neither shall they marry, be given in marriage, and so forth, right? Even such is the kingdom of heaven. Remember, kingdom of heaven is heaven on earth. So they do not understand the scriptures, nor the power of God, in the understanding of the resurrection. Do you see what's happening here? Watch this. Remember, here we are. This is the day after the crucifixion, the day after the preparation. Okay? So it's Sabbath day. He's already in the grave, and they think it's after 3 days in the grave. They think it means 3 days in the grave because they know not the scriptures. They know not the power of God and the understanding in the resurrection. And listen to what he says after they command him. Because Pilate says, okay, so command therefore that the sepulchre be made sure, okay? That it be made guarded, that it's going to be rendered secure. Listen to this. Until the 3rd day. Well, they said after 3 days. And yet now it's saying until the 3rd day. Oh, but it gets better. Listen to what they say next. Lest his disciples, now remember, this conversation is only in Matthew. Lest his disciples come by night and steal him away and say unto the people that he is risen from the dead. Listen to this. So the last error shall be worse than the first. Oh, Mike, I know Mike's going to love this. Tabitha's going to love this. I am not going to tell you exactly what that means, but many of you who have been listening for a little while, you know what this means. So the last error shall be worse than the first. And the last, the ends, the final error, the final crucifixion shall be worse than the beginning one, the first one of all. Oh my goodness. Have we just been given more revelation about that? What did I just prove that this was telling us about? Right? What did we just prove? First of all, that it's trumpets. That it's mid-trumpets at when he's going to be cut off. Just like Zechariah. That the mid-trumpets, it leaves then the 2.5 days to 2.5 years as the type and shadow. And I'm not saying, we don't know what this cut off here means. But we know it's the time of him being cut off. We saw it in Zechariah 11. We just read it here. We read it over in Daniel chapter 9. This is when the Messiah is going to be cut off. Some say the scriptures will translate there and say dead. Maybe he leaves. Maybe, I don't know exactly what it is. But the type and shadow of the resurrections and of the storylines in Matthew, Mark, and Luke are to the different groups. Luke is right here at the beginning. This is Mark. This is Matthew. And mid trumpets at the cutting off again with the final 2.5 years is giving us the exact story in Matthew 27 to Zechariah chapter 11 and to Daniel chapter 9 after the 10.5 years. What? But now watch. It was preparation day, and then they're talking about all this on the Sabbath day. And so they go and make it sure, and they make sure by sealing the sepulchre. Remember, the stone was already rolled over. This time they say, let's not make this error worse than the first time. So this time in Matthew's, they put a sealant around the whole thing. And they have the guards there, of course. Now watch this. In the end of the Sabbath, it began to dawn toward the first day of the week. There it is. And now it begins to dawn toward the first day of the week. And where are we again? At the dawning of the first day of the week right here. But they went to speak to what? They went on the Sabbath day. So he was already in the grave, it said in Matthew's. They went on the Sabbath day, sometime during the day, you would assume. They have it all sealed up around the stone, and the guards are now there. And then the following verse at the following chapter, we see that it's now dawn is beginning on the first day of the week, which is right here. And look at what happens. Toward the first day of the week, there was a great earthquake. This is the end of the sixth trumpet. Okay, when the Lord is coming what? The Lord is coming feet down on the Mount of Olives. His countenance like lightning, like we read, right? Like lightning from one end unto the other. And for fear of him, the keepers, of course they were still there. They had to stay there for another 3.5 days, right? But it didn't happen 3.5 days later. It happened a day later. Probably even less than 24 hours, because who knows what time of day during the sunny hours that they went to go talk to Pilate to get the guards and to get the whole thing sealed. The next day, early in the morning, the keepers are freaking out. And what happens? The angel shows up and tells them, he went before you, there shall you meet him. Then you get the report of the guards. And so it took, so they took the money and did as they were taught. And this saying is commonly reported among the Jews until this day. Unto this day, meaning even now as I'm speaking unto you. Did you see what happened? Remember I told you to pay attention to when he was taken, right? When he was taken, let me show you the clincher. Okay? Take covenant for 30 pieces of silver unto the time that he was taken into, see? And they came and laid their hands on Jesus and took him. For all they that were with him with the sword would perish. The disciples fled, came and destroy him. You see, it was from the moment that what? That they took him. And then it's early in the morning. Okay? We have the same story being given to us in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. He's taken at the beginning, early time, in the evening time, but in the early portion of the evening of Passover. When they laid their hands on him to take him, then he was beaten and all those things. And then we have early in the morning. And we know, of course, then the crucifixion happens. And then what happens? The resurrection. They took him, right? betrayed into the hands of sinful men. He was crucified. And then on the third day, he rose. What does that sound like to you? He was taken into the hands of sinful men. He was crucified. He was put in the tomb. It was a Sabbath on the second day. And on the third day, he rose again. So how long was he in the tomb for? Towards the end of the day here, before sunset, he was put into the tomb. So how long was he in the grave for? About a day and a half. So then how do we get the answer to how these guys are then saying the third day he would rise again? How is it they're saying that today is the third day? Here's the answer. Since these things were done. What things? And how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him. They brought him forth. They brought him into prison to be condemned to death and have crucified him. Let me show you with more clarity. Do you remember? This was about hand to hand and to reveal the difference between a comma and compared to no comma and. The whole thing was the revelation of Luke knowing all things in order, starting at the beginning and showing from Luke 1 verse 1 of Luke understanding and knowing all things in order from the very beginning. Whereas Mark and Matthew, even though they have understanding, they didn't know it in order, nor have it in complete understanding. Whereas Luke had it all in understanding and in order from the very beginning. And what does Luke tell us about this account? Remember the two angels that showed up at the resurrection here? When they go and they see that the sepulcher's gone. Remember, now the body is gone, the bride has escaped. That's the type and shadow for our season and time now in the beginning of this day and age that is about to come upon us. The angel said, he is not here, but he is risen. Remember how he spake unto you when he was yet in Galilee. Here it comes. This is the revelation of the comma and. Saying, the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men. Did we not read that in every account? When did Jesus get delivered into the hands of sinful men? In each and every account, it was after he had eaten the Passover. Then they went to go to the mountain and Jesus prayed, and then coming down the mountain, give or take a couple, 3 hours into the Passover, starting in the evening, they came and took him. He was betrayed but with a kiss, and he was delivered into the hands of sinful men. Comma and be crucified. When was he then crucified? The following morning between 6 and 9. And, comma, and the third day rise again. This was a Sabbath day. All of these other things happened on day 1. Day 2 was a Sabbath. He rose again on the third day, early in the morning. Are you seeing what I'm saying as I finish this up? Comma and, comma and. When did the count of the 3 days begin? At the being delivered into the hands of sinful men. That is when his count began. That's what he told them while he was yet in Galilee. He said that I shall be betrayed into the hands of sinful men. I will be caused to be put to death and crucified, and on the third day rise again. He was not in the grave for 3 days. That's what they're confirming down here in 20 and 21. While Jesus is walking with them, he did not correct them. They said, look, today is the third day since these things were done. What things? From the time when our chief priests and our rulers delivered him to be condemned to death and have crucified him. Now today is the third day since these things were done. It wasn't only the crucifixion, it was from when he was taken into the hands of sinful men. Brothers and sisters, 14ers, it begins from the start of Passover, then crucified, then put in the grave, finished their spices. Then at sunset, it was the Sabbath, and they took the day off. It was the break time, the rest, which was also the Holy Convocation. Okay, let me show you that real quick. As I wrap this up, it was a long one, but man, I think it was worth every moment. I pray you guys do as well. And I'm sure you'll have to take some time to go through it, man. It was jam-packed. Okay? First in order is 6 days and the seventh rest. The 14th day, you see, there's the 14th day. And the 15th day is unleavened bread. And the first day, which is of unleavened bread, is you shall do no servile work therein. You see? So the 14th day is what? It's the preparation day. They're allowed to work. They're still working. They're doing all sorts of things. This was the day of his crucifixion on the Passover. He was crucified. You see, when I was talking to Mark about this as well, the church teaches us that while Christ was on the cross, they were preparing the sacrificial lamb in the temple. Well, that's correct. But that's what's confused people in understanding this count outside of not knowing the comma and. What they didn't realize is, well, Christ is having the Passover meal with them on Passover, but in the evening when it just started. You see, he was taken in the evening at the beginning of the 14th day. He's eating it. Then he's taken a little bit into it. And then by morning, while they're now starting to prepare the lamb, Jesus is being prepared to be crucified. Because most Jews, if not all Jews, they don't eat the lamb on the evening before. They prepare it during the day of Passover in the daytime, in the morning, and they complete it and finish it all and burn the rest before the sunset and the 15th day begins. Jesus, with his disciples, had it right at the beginning. So the whole day of preparation, from him eating the Passover, being taken, the morning, his crucifixion, and being laid in the grave, was all the day of the preparation. And the count began from when he was taken into the hands of sinful men. That was day 1. Day 2, the 15th day, was a no-work day, which was also a Sabbath as a no-work day. And so they didn't work. They took the day off. And then when they came the next day, which is the first day of the week, he was already risen early in the morning. Brothers and sisters, the revelation is from the moment he was taken into the hands of sinful men on day 1 is when the clock of Christ's count for the third day resurrection began. You followed? You see what this tells us? This reveals to us this people fighting and arguing over, it must have been a Wednesday because Matthew says after 3 days. Who in Matthew says after 3 days? The Pharisees. They think it was 3 days after his death. So what do we see? They'll say, well, it had to be here. And you got 1, 2, 3. And then he resurrected over here. And others say, no, it would have been 2.5 days because it said on the third day. So they say he must have been happening here. And then 1, 2, and then he resurrected over here. The revelation and the excitement of all of this is not only that it proves it was 2.5 days from being taken, but it shows that the revelation of our end time understanding of the 2.5 days is 2.5 years is now understood and locked in truth. 2.5 days from being taken. Man, are you kidding me? You see how awesome this was? It's mind-blowing stuff that we're going through here, guys. It's just, I'm sure many of you will have to watch this again. I know it's almost 3 hours long. My wife's like, oh, dude, honey, that's going to be like a 4-hour video. And I said, nah, I can do it at about 2.5. You see, we're pushing 3 because it was a mic drop. Holy cow, what is going on? Look at what this tells us. Look at what it confirms to us in the end of days. And not only that, look at everything that I built in it for you guys, especially the newer people that are really starting to dig in and see the depths and the deep, deep digging, diving that we're doing into these scriptures, revealing the end of days and what these gospels are telling us. I'm excited by this because I have never understood this in my entire life, how this could be this. We have just revealed another argument in the revelation of the end of days that doesn't only show us and confirm to us an understanding for the end of days, but it reveals to us a truth of what was and the proper way to understand and to count it. Man, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. This is mind-blowing, guys. Just crazy. Let me show you something. So do you understand what I'm getting at now? Do you see what I'm talking about? Do you understand why this time is so important? You see, since I'm already going long anyways, what the heck is a little bit longer, right? Guys, remember this? This is in the description box under videos as well, under all the videos. The Psalms 90 and 10, 70 to 80 from spring 2021, which will be the time of 71. Then you have 12 months in between. Then you turn 72. That's 1 year fulfilled from the anniversary of 71. See, 2021, right till before the first day or into the spring of 2022. That's year 1. That's year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You see, you don't turn 10 as soon as you hit 80. You got to complete it. Which brings us into the spring of 2031. And then it says, for soon cut off. We've shared that it's a short period of time, being about 6 months. So from spring of 31 to 81 is about 6 months. And it's what? To the spring of 31. That word ended here for the 10 years. From the spring of 31 to the fall of 31. That is our 10.5 years. This is the time frame of the fall of 31, when Satan will be cast down to the earth, when Messiah will be cut off and the pit will open, and it's what you read about in that craziness of Zechariah chapter 11. That's the cutoff time when we fly away. This is the Jews. This is those who were in Israel with Christ while it was being rebuilt, the city and the streets and the temple. They're now going to fly away for the full 3.5 years, from 81.5 to 82. There's your half. And then 1, 2, 3.5 years. Here it is down here. From the fall of 31, you see? From when Satan's been cast down. From the fall of 31, they leave till the spring of 32. That's 6 months. Year and a half. 2.5 years. 3.5 years to the end of the 14 years. Why is this exclamation mark here? Because the Lord returns feet down on the Mount of Olives for the final year, what I call cleanup, which is all of these references here in Scripture, like Daniel 9:27, Zechariah 14. And at the end of that final year, this final year, which is the 14th year, the final year of tribulation comes to an end, and the total of 14 years are over by the spring of 2035. And finally, the final year, jubilee and restoration of each tribe to their promised lands, just as Ezekiel 47 but 48 clearly reveals to us. It's the same as Psalms 133, how great it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. It is the 15th and final jubilee. And why does this matter to us now? Because May 14th to this Shabbat or Pentecost is the end of the 50 days and the beginning of the true 71, after they've been in the land which the Lord has given them for 3 years. Then it is good for the Lord, the fruit. No other time in all of human history prior to or going forward will ever equal the end of 2,000 years to the end of 2033, from 33 AD to when the Lord will return back after 2,000 years, feet down on the Mount of Olives. And like the scripture told us, at the completion of 13 years, then he will fulfill the 14th year himself. No other time in human history. So when we see all of this preparation, all of these restrictions, all of what's going on around the world, and more lockdowns and more fear of COVID and the pestilence and all these things, fear not if you are in the Lord. Fear not if you are in Christ Jesus, our Lord and Savior. Repent. Give your life to Christ. Keep from sin. Keep drawing in closer to him. Come and join the forum. Get connected with people who are watching for the Lord, who are praying and who are seeking him, who can understand that we're in this season and time and we're lifting each other up. Come and join the forum. Join some of the brothers and sisters discords. Watch the videos and understand it in that intro series. And understand that we are right here, as of me making this video today, right here, January 26th. And the time we're sharing right now is to right here. And remember why it mattered? Do you remember why it mattered? Because only in Luke was his body as a reference, type, and shadow of his body like his bride mentioned only in Luke's revelation, in Luke's resurrection story. At what? Early in the morning on the first day of the week. So you guys want to wonder where I'm looking at? I'm not giving you an exact date, but I'm telling you where I am knowing it is, in everything that I know, not of thus saith the Lord, because the Lord God never told me, but the Lord God did tell me that that the 50th and the understanding of 50, 14, 50 was right on target. This is that time. And where do they begin? The count of the Omer, which goes to Pentecost for the 50 days. 28th into the 29th at the time of resurrection. Brothers and sisters, I love you. God bless you. I pray this excites you. I know it will hurt some people's brains. There was a lot there, but I know I'm telling you now, get your papers and pens, but I pray that you had your papers and pens, that you were prepared and ready to understand, ready to take in the revelation and to see the process of my mind and how it was all coming about and revealed, so that you guys can understand as I understand and go in and seek these things for yourself. I love you guys. I love your families. I'm praying for you. I'm praying for your families, and I'm looking forward to meeting you all very, very soon. God bless you. I love you. Bye for now.